Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. My name is Bart. I'm your skipper for the next hour and a half or so. It is my first day on board. My friend here just told me that if I turn the wheel to the right, the boat goes to the right, and the other way around. So let's see what happens. It's quiet on the canals now, so it's safe. We're going to do the Amsterdam Light Festival for an hour and a half approximately. The crazy thing here in Holland is our climate, one of the crazy things, and we have a microclimate inside the boat, and that's really horrible. And that means that the windows will fuck up when we are on our way. There are 3 solutions for it. First of all, stop breathing. That always works. I won't. Second, we have these high-tech pieces of equipment called a squeegee in good English. You can use that to clean the windows. And most of the windows are sliding windows, so you can open up a little bit, and that also helps. And it takes better pictures if you want to take a picture. And it's dry by now. Almost, huh? If you have any questions, I'm always here. If I'm not here, shout help, because then you have a serious problem. Okay, well, let's have a little bit of fun. I will tell you a bit about Amsterdam, the history of Amsterdam, and I will give you my commentary on some of the works of art, because I'm not impressed by all of them. Okay, let's get the show on the road. Yes.
Like that, like
Het is je eerste dag bij ons. Hoe lang doe je het al, vader?
Welcome to the Amsterdam Light Festival. I'm Tom, and they've asked me to help your mind run wild today. Not the boat, because its top speed is just 6 kilometers per hour, but you, or better yet, your imagination. Because that's what this 11th edition of the Amsterdam Light Festival is all about. Imagine Beyond is the title. So let go of reality for a little while and let me guide you through everything that bubbles up in your mind. I'll start by letting you hear something from my own imagination. I'm a poet, so I'll do it with a poem. It's called Route. So many miles, asphalt and crash barriers, white lines to stare at. Tom keeps his mouth shut. No chance of a chat. Even more miles driving between high walls, nothing else to look at. There must be something out there. But Tom will tell me nothing of that. You might recognize that situation if you've ever driven along a motorway. That you've traveled 100 miles and seen nothing. Well, today we'll be doing things very differently. Because today I'm your TomTom as well. I'll be guiding your gaze to the left and the right, sometimes upwards or straight ahead. And that's already a bit tricky because some of you are travelling backwards on the boat. So when I say left, then for those people it's on the right, and vice versa of course. So I'll be interrupting from time to time, probably when you're right in the middle of an interesting conversation or just chilling and dreaming. And then you'll hear this. And then I'll do my best to break through reality with words and to see things that aren't really there except in our heads. Just like you were driving along the motorway with me a moment ago while you're sitting on a boat. Just like you saw the white lines on the asphalt while you were on a boat on the water. You saw it in front of you, even though you're not there. May I ask you to do the same during this whole trip? To spend time in your head as often as possible. to let imaginary layers transform everything you see, to think about things in the way the artist didn't intend. Don't take anything for what it is, but drift away in your thoughts. Have fun. Below us is water, lots of water. H2O if you want to stick to the facts. There are 1.26 trillion litres of water on our planet, and it's been there for billions of years. There's no new water being added, and not much disappears into outer space either. So, we have those 1.26 trillion litres of water, and we have to make do with it. That means the water below us already has a long career behind it. A really long CV. It has been drunk by dinosaurs. It was snow that mammoths plodded through. The soldiers of Julius Caesar drank it. It was peed out by Rembrandt van Rijn and Vincent van Gogh. It has been coal and coffee. It's been used to flush toilets. It was a waterfall, a mountain lake, the waves on an ocean around a tropical island. NASA space capsules have splashed down into it. As a tsunami, it has forced people to flee. Actually, the entire history of the world is sloshing around below your feet. And now, it's carrying you during this Amsterdam Light Festival.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, well you can hear it's going to be a very philosophical, poetic tour. This Tom, well, it's quite a character. Let me tell you a little bit about Amsterdam. It's a pretty old city. 1,400 years ago the first people came to work and live here. But Amsterdam became a world city, a very important city in the 17th century. It's what we call the Golden Age. It was the time when we knew how to build fantastic sailboats. We learned a lot about navigation at the time, and we had a couple of entrepreneurs who worked and lived here in Amsterdam, who sent these boats out all over the world looking for business, for merchandise, for goods that we could sell for a profit. And we were very good at it. We called it business in those days. Nowadays you would call it stealing, plundering, and pillaging. Well, that's what we did in the 17th century. Now all of those voyages started right here in this part of Amsterdam. This is the old port of the city. This is the starting point and end point of all of those international voyages. During those voyages we discovered a lot of countries. New Zealand, for instance, was discovered by us. Australia was discovered by us. We called it New Holland. We gave it to the British, who turned it into a prison, and well, the rest is history. We also went to the other side of the world, across the pond to North America, where we founded a city called New Amsterdam. We later sold that to the British for £1, and that was a very good business deal, because that city is now called New York. Well, we do make mistakes every now and again. Anyway, so this is the place where it all started. This small part of this small, sort of a pond, you can say. The first work of art is coming up in front of us. We're going through it, so that's interesting. And I'll let you listen to our guide.
Read it from the clutches of boredom. You are the bringer of imagination. We're cruising towards the Light Gate, an arc de triomphe of light. Can you see it, rising up over the Oosterdok? Behind it, the city is celebrating. The people of Amsterdam are dancing and singing on the quaysides. They're calling your name. The great hero is entering the city. How does it feel? Lightgate is an artwork by Edwin Baruch. It's a floating metal construction with light on the inside, made specially for this edition of the Amsterdam Light Festival. At the same time, it somehow feels centuries old. The Arc de Triomphe of Amsterdam. This thing seems so familiar because I've seen it in other old cities, which is exactly what Edwin Baruch wants to say here. Things that existed earlier are often the inspiration for things today. Hold on to that triumphant feeling for a moment. The feeling that we are the heroes about to enter the city. Let them wave to you.
The next work of art is very special. It's coming up in about 3 minutes, 2-3 minutes or so. And it's special in the sense that it's totally invisible. And we always get a lot of information before the Light Festival starts every year, and in order to do our homework. And when I first looked at it, and I looked at the information, I saw this artwork, and I thought this is going to be the highlight of this year's festival. It has a great concept, the idea was really good, the text, accompanying text was also very good. But unfortunately the artist had about a year to prepare himself for this year, and I think he spent that year living in a coffee shop somewhere, because it just doesn't work. So the execution is miserable. You will see on the left hand side, you will see a couple of ultraviolet spotlights, purple spotlights, and you can see a small part of what it's supposed to look like. Just above those spots there's a small streak of green light, and that is supposed to go to the tower that is here on the right hand side of the canal. It's supposed to go all the way to the top. Yeah, well, that doesn't work.
People waving to us from the quayside. I got carried away by the fantasy of sailing in as a hero. But actually, I always feel a bit watched when I'm on a boat. Do you feel the same? You can't really move around. You're on the water, open and exposed. If there's a roof, then it's made of glass. There's no escaping the gaze of other people. From the left, from the right, from above. The people on the quayside are looking down on you too. You've got the staring eyes of people all around you, seeing you, judging you. And then this, rays of light. It looks a bit like a watchtower with searchlights on it, seeking me. They're watching out for us from that old Montalban tower. It used to be part of the city wall of the fortifications. That tower has always stood there to keep a watch on others. Tamar Frank devised the beams of light that now shine from the tower, even though they aren't real beams of light, not searchlights that can be turned in all directions, which should reassure me. It's hundreds of thin fishing lines, made of fluorescent material. They run from the tower to the other side of the water, and they're illuminated by UV spotlights, so that they are constantly fluorescing, or whatever you call it. And so we look at the beams of light themselves, instead of the beams of light telling us what we should see.
As I said, it's a little bit disappointing. I was really supposed to have some computer renderings of it, and that was really cool. Nice, bright green stripes coming all the way down, like spotlights. So, unfortunately. At least the next one is working properly, and that also looks very good. It's coming up a little bit further on the left-hand side of the canal. You can't miss it. There are big red letters that are constantly changing. And that will set your imagination to work.
I'll read a little more from my new collection of poems, A Pre-Printed Life. It hasn't been published yet, but I'm sure it will be soon. The poem is called Box Filler. A postal code fits in 6 boxes. My telephone number in 10. If I have 280 of them, then it'll be a tweet. Now I get 8 for imagine, plus exclamation mark. But with 9, I'd be beat. 8 little boxes for 8 characters. That's the possibility provided by Tube Display. It's a work by Lambert Coates. Words of 8 letters merge from one to the other. A bit like the numbers on a clock radio. But here, we have pneumatically driven light tubes. They slide together and apart, and in doing so, always form the 8 letters of a word. It's not much, 8 characters. Self-limitation reveals the master, so they sometimes say. Less is more. But isn't this overdoing it? What happens in your head if I confine myself to words like symbolic, wildlife, illusion, magnetic, consider, presence?
So this is a nice one, and it will use your imagination. The next work of art coming up is floating on the left-hand side of the canal in about 3 minutes. And when I first saw that, I thought, again, a very good concept, because it looks like an oversized market stall. And it's floating next to the oldest market that we have here in the Netherlands. That's the Waterloo Square market. And it's an open-air market, and they sell them most of the merchandise on stalls, which are wooden planks with a canvas top. And that's exactly what this work of art looks like. And then I read the description, and of course I had egg on my face. It's a completely different meaning. I'll let you listen to it.
Gentlemen, speaking from the cockpit, my name is Tom, and I'm the captain on this flight to Light. We just departed from Amsterdam. We made a turn over the Oosterdock and are now following a southwesterly course towards. That's how pilots always talk. When I hear a voice like that, I immediately think I'm going to fly. And when I look to the left, I get the same feeling. It looks like a long row of wings rising up in the wind, and we are moving with them, as if the bow of our boat is about to lift up and slowly climb up into the sky. The wings are also intended to remind you of birds, or more specifically, magpies. Just look at the colors. The magpie is often seen as a thief. But much further east, for instance in Taiwan, they see this bird as a bringer of good luck. And this artwork, called Flying with the Light, does indeed come from Taiwan. It was made by architecture students under the leadership of their professor, Chen Chi Chen. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just come back with some extra flight information. The weather is good. We've departed on time, and in a few moments we'll be rising above the everyday and the obvious. We expect no further delays. I wish you a good journey.
Many times just before I was kicked out of school, my teachers told me I had way too much imagination. Well, I've tried to use that imagination and seeing a bird in it, especially a magpie. A magpie is extra in het Nederlands. Well, for the life of me, I can't see a magpie in it. I just see an oversized market stall. But I'm a skipper. I'm not an artist, so that's quite weird. We're coming up to a very important part of Amsterdam, and that's the water that you see here in front of us. I'm turning to the left, going onto it. And that's the only natural waterway we have here in the city. All of the canals are man-made, all dug out by hand, except for this one. It's a river, it starts on the left-hand side, and it ends up on the right-hand side, where we started. That's the mouth of the river. And this river is basically the reason why Amsterdam was built here. Because of this river, Amsterdam is a very strategic location to do business with basically the whole world. This river flows into what used to be an inland sea. Until 100 years ago, that was an inland sea. If you look at the map of the Netherlands, there's a big lake right in the center, and that was open sea. It was connected to the Atlantic Ocean. So if a boat left Amsterdam to get merchandise from overseas and he returned, then it was very easy to put it on smaller boats, smaller barges, and bring it up this river. And this river is part of the Rhine system, the Rhine Delta. And the Rhine starts in Switzerland, flows through Germany, parts of France, and is close to Belgium, where it connects with other rivers. So this was a prime location to do business with basically the whole world. There's another reason why this river was important for Amsterdam, and that's because of its name. 1,000 years ago, we had severe flooding coming in from this inland sea, and they built a dam in the river. So you have two words, the Amstel, which is the river, and the dam, and combined that makes Amsterdam. We did the same with Rotterdam, our second biggest city, and that's a dam in the river Rotterdam. Some people say we're a dam country. Well, that brings us to the next work of art, and we're going through it one more time. And I skipped the poetic explanation because you can describe this work of art with one simple word, and that's fireflies. Vuurvliegjes. And this is one of my favorites. It's simple, it's elegant, it works. That's very important. And it just looks cool. This is nice. Next one coming up in front of us. If you look through the front of the boat, you can see all of those lighted stripes here. That's on a bridge. But let me draw your attention to the right hand side here. You can see those three lighted arches. That's a bridge. And when you look through the bridge, you can see one of the main canals in Amsterdam. When the city started to grow in the Golden Age, they needed new houses, and that's when they started to build three main canals around the old city center. And they're built in a semicircle. And this is the most important one. This is the richest one. It's called the Canal of the Gentlemen. This is the place where all the upstanding, decent people lived. They were the ship owners, they were the slave traders, the gun dealers, the drug dealers, the business owners, they lived there. The mayors, they all lived there. Nowadays, not a lot has changed. The professions have changed, but the kind of people haven't. Now it's lawyers, accountants, and still drug dealers, and of course, our mayor still lives there.
Imagine that you had a pen in your hands with which you could draw things into the world around you. Then you would look to the right here and draw a few more floors on top of the canal houses. Or to the left, you draw trees on the houseboats, or a cow in an excursion boat. We are heading towards the Magere Brug, or Skinny Bridge. And actually, drawing in the space is exactly what Peter Fink has done with this bridge. Not with a pen, but with light. Look at those lines of white light. Peter draws new lines through those that already exist. The lines of the bridge, but also of the Amstel locks that lie beyond. It makes the bridge much bigger. Perhaps it even seems as if he completes the bridge. And that's the feeling it gives me anyway, when all those diagonal lines come together. It's funny, because actually, you draw on a flat surface. On paper, on a screen. Peter draws on a flat surface with his lines of light too. It seems three-dimensional because of those diagonal lines. These create a sense of depth. But it's an illusion. Once we've passed under the bridge, you can see that the lines of light continue on the locks situated behind. The lockkeeper's hut is located in the middle of these locks and can only be reached by boat. Dream big, sleep tiny, it says on a sign by the door. Dream big is certainly what Peter Fink has done.
Well, that was a nice one. It's very decorative. We'll see it one more time when we return. And I told you that Amsterdam had trouble with flooding from the seaside of the city, and that they solved it by building a dam in the river. It was only the seaside that gave us trouble with water. We are 50 centimeters, that's about 2 feet for our American friends, and you're still not metric. And we're about 50 centimeters below the level of the North Sea, which is about 20 kilometers away from here. But also the river gave us a lot of trouble, because when the snow was melting in the Alps, in the springtime, we got a lot of meltwater here. And that also had to be regulated, otherwise we would drown. So they built a system of locks all around the city to protect it from flooding. And we're going through one of those old locks here right now. This lock is a couple of 100 years old. It's still working. It's a safety precaution now that they're always open, these locks, because the river has been canalized. But they still work. Just in case something happens in the south part of the Netherlands, then we can still close these locks off and keep Amsterdam safe. And that's a wonderful feeling. People who live here. Coming up on the right is one more of those canals that were built all around the city. You can look through the bridge. The next work of art is coming up in a little bit, in a couple of minutes. But I want to show you that big building that's standing on the left-hand side. And it's nicely lit. It looks a little bit like a castle. That's the most famous and most beautiful hotel that we have here in Amsterdam. It's the Amstel Hotel, named after the river Amstel, of course. And this is the place where the really important people stay when they visit Amsterdam. And people like Madonna, Mick Jagger, Prince stayed here quite a bit when he was still alive. But also royalty and presidents. For instance, the last American president who stayed here was President Obama. Donald Trump also wanted the room not that long ago, but they refused him and sent him to the YMCA. And in front of this hotel is the next work of art, and that is my favorite for this year.
That get people's attention as quickly as shouting fire. Not that it makes everyone run away, of course. I heard that if there's a big fire somewhere, animals run away from it and people run towards it. Fire attracts us. We're naturally curious. Just like you. You sit calmly while the flames shoot high into the sky here on the water. To the left, just before the Amsterdam Hotel. It's a fake fire, I do realize this. Bamboo poles rise up into the air. Bamboo wound around with aluminium tape. That's all it is. And bamboo poles become a sea of fire. You can see the sparks dancing up high into the sky. I immediately feel my body telling me to be careful, don't get too close, don't take any risks. And at the same time, it attracts me. Also, because fire is destructive, and this destruction always leads to a new beginning. Fire makes sand into glass, and dough into bread. Fire burns down forests, but in the process makes the soil fertile. Fire changes everything, and you can run away from this, be a chicken or a scaredy cat, but you can also move towards it and embrace the new beginning. Maybe that's why this artwork by Fendel and de Wolf is called Sign, a sign of a new beginning, a starting shot. So abandon yourself to the experience and gaze at the fire of change.
This one really works, and it's beautiful. I spoke to one of the concierges last week, and he told me that almost every night one of their drunk or stoned guests wakes up in the middle of the night, and they call down to reception to tell them that the hotel is on fire. It really works. Right-hand side, there's a big white building, and it has the name on top of it. It says Carré. Carré is French for square, vierkant. This is the most famous theater that we have here in the Netherlands. Built in the 1850s somewhere, really beautiful, both on the outside and on the inside. It was built as a circus theater, and there was a circus 7 days a week until the circus became less popular here. And they turned it into a regular theater. It's really beautiful. You made it if you're allowed to play here. Joep van het Hek, the Dutch people. Joepie. Joepie and Flappy. Joepie and Flappy. Well, we're going through those locks one more time, and then underneath the Skinny Bridge. And the Skinny Bridge is a very famous bridge here in Amsterdam. You could say it's our Eiffel Tower, like the one in Paris. It's a little bit more, it's a little smaller, it's a little bit more skinny, you could say. The name Skinny Bridge started about 400 years ago, when the first bridge that they ever built here was very narrow. It was about 1 meter wide, that's 3 feet. That's the reason why it was called skinny. It was very difficult to cross the bridge if you came from opposite directions. You had to squeeze past one another to go by. And that inspired young young Dutch boys into a game that has been played for centuries since. The boys were standing in the middle of the bridge, and they were waiting for pretty girls to pass by. And when they pass by, they sneak kisses to them, and they grab them by their behind. A little bit like me 400 years ago. Of course, relationships evolved from that, babies of course evolved from that, and for that reason a legend formed around this bridge. The legend says that if you kiss your partner underneath or on top of the skinny bridge, your relationship will last forever. Now, of course, that's a beautiful thought, but it raises a very important question, and that is, do you want your relationship to to last forever. Now if you do, then this is your chance to seal it with a kiss. If you don't, well, I have a list of divorce lawyers here. My advice to you is do kiss your partner, if you mean it or not. It's an argument. To make sure you don't kiss the wrong partner, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you a little bit of light. And I can assure you, it really works. I kissed 6 different partners underneath the bridge, and all of those relationships felt as if they lasted a lifetime. The last one is doing very well. And I'm going to turn right here. Yeah, it's no use to tell you about it because there was a work of art on the left-hand side of the canal, but the storm took it away. It's all gone. Apparently, it's very difficult to make something windproof. So I'll tell you this about a different story. There's nothing here. There's supposed to be all kinds of lights that open up and close, but it's all blown away. So I'll tell you a little bit about the houseboats that we have here in the city. I'm sure you noticed that we have quite a few of them floating around here. This houseboat thing started just after the Second World War. A lot of people came to work here in Amsterdam, but there were not enough houses for them, especially those with lower income. At the same time, there were a lot of old commercial sailing boats that were sold for scrap. So you could buy these old boats for very little money, and that's what a lot of people did. They chopped off the mast, built a garden shed on top of them, and they started to live there. It was very primitive. There was no gas, no electricity, no water. The boats were not connected to the sewer, which made the canal a smelly place. But it was cheap, that's for sure. They didn't have to pay any rent or taxes or whatever. You can see a couple of those really old boats that came here just after the war, here on the right hand side. Those boats are about 125, 150 years old. In the 1960s, Amsterdam became a hippie city. Flower power was everywhere. People were dancing bare feet in the street with flowers in their hair, smoking big joints, and these hippies usually were not very rich, and they also started to bring their boats to the city. They decorated them very nicely with flowers and whatever. It was getting out of hand, and in the 1970s, in the late 1970s, we had 10,000 illegal houseboats here in Amsterdam. And there were so many that you couldn't drive a normal boat through the canals anymore, and that became a problem. So the city decided to do something against all of these illegal boats. And we're very pragmatic people here in Amsterdam, so to get rid of illegal stuff, we just legalize it, and that always works. They got rid of a couple of thousand of these boats, and all of the boats that you see here now, they are legal, and they're connected to all the amenities, gas, water, electricity, and very importantly, to the sewer system. And since then, the houseboats changed from being the cheapest way to live in Amsterdam to the most expensive way to live in Amsterdam. The houseboats here on the right hand side, on average, will set you back between 500,000 and 700,000 euros, depending on size. So it's expensive. Next work of art, by the way, is coming up on the left-hand side.
Water on which you float. Not even the people sitting around you. It's it's all a simulation, all virtual. In fact, you're lying in a bed somewhere wearing a VR headset and a suit full of sensors. Admit it, this world feels very real. Everything you see, everything you hear and feel, it's all true. Until you look to the left in just a moment. And suddenly, there's a glitch, a bug, a ring between the trees, where reality no longer holds together. In that ring, you see the surroundings you're supposed to see, but at the wrong time. It's daytime, while we're cruising after sunset. Time has gone wrong. In the ring, it's running late, or ahead, I don't know, but it's not in sync. Is this proof that we're living in a simulation? Or are we really supposed to believe that this is only an artwork entitled Hourglass by the artist Wilhelmusflug? I don't believe a word of it. They're feeding us lies. No, I realize what's going on.
Since the movie The Matrix, many people think that we're living in a make-believe world, software, digital people. These artists also use that as a concept. The next work of art is coming up in about a minute on the right-hand side. An American artist, Jason Crookman, what's in the name? He's very good with words. He has a lot of imagination using words. That's it.
Just like rushes sway in the wind, so here, little white balls are waving back and forth on wires. You probably need to look behind you for a moment, to the right of the boat. Strands that form part of some alien life form. That's how it looks. As if something from Mars has landed here on Earth. We can't really tell what this something is doing, what it's thinking, or whether it thinks at all. It's waving. That's all we can say about it. It seems to live off the air, and it's peaceful, for the time being at least. Particle Matters, that's its name, created by the American artist Jason Crookman.
Well, that's a very imaginative way to describe 1,000 ping pong balls hanging from a steel wire.
Ice lollies in the strangest flavors. Strawberry and basil, mango and aubergine, endive and ink. They might not all be super tasty, but they all look worth a lick. This is not, of course, exactly what OBA, the Office for Beyond Boundaries Architecture, intended. They call the work light wave, because it's a wave of light, not created by ice lollies, but by dozens of translucent reflective paddles made of vinyl. I prefer ice lollies, and their coloured shadows are really fun, especially when you see them in the daytime. Yellow, red, orange and other ice lolly colours drip onto the ground. Right away it feels like a warm summer's day, although we're in the middle of winter. Or am I the only one to get this feeling? Do you simply see translucent reflective paddles made of vinyl? Well, then you should come back here in the daytime. Then you'll really see what I mean.
the next one's coming up in a bit on the right hand side of the canal. Look for moving marbles, big marbles, lighted marbles.
If you happen to see a lion on your left, or a tiger, then don't worry. We're cruising past Artist's Zoo. But today, I prefer to watch monkeys on the other side. Do you see the apartments on the right? People live there, each with their own life in which they themselves form the centre. Each person feels unique, but are they really? They cook the same recipes from the same meal boxes. Now and again they send a birthday card which already has congratulations printed on it so you don't have to write anymore yourself. A pre-printed life. Or a life like a marble track. The route looks spectacular, but in fact, the marble has no choice at all. So it's really funny that Tjatma van Galen, Jasper van Roden and Olaf van Eyckhuizen have created a huge marble track here, just in front of those apartments, with luminous marbles that kind of emanate. Look at me, see what I'm doing here. Obviously unaware that the next marble will follow exactly the same course. What would happen if one marble would suddenly leave the standard track and begin an unpredictable adventure? This is a new bridge, the Bridge of 1,000 Dreams, built specially for the festival, together with Amsterdam's Bridges and Quays programme, devised by Studio Tour and made with the dreams of 1,000 Amsterdam children.
And that's here on the right hand side.
For themselves, for their family, their friends, the city. You can see elements of these dreams on the bamboo poles that form the bridge, if you look very closely. These dream fragments are painted on the bamboo poles with neon paint. And so this structure is not only a bridge between two quays, but also a bridge between reality and a dream, between now and the future, between having a wish and seeing it fulfilled. If giants lived among us, how would the world look then? Would colossal houses stand between very small ones? And would there also be giant pets that would make our lives really dangerous? Giant cats that play with giant balls of wood? The thread here that runs across the quays and through the water, the artwork Spinning a Yarn by Studio Vertigo from London, makes you think of something gigantic. As if a colossal person has dropped their knitting. Giants don't exist. The only giant in this story is the old crane, which seems to be heroically trying to pull the threads out of the water. Maybe to show us that he can still manage it with his old machinery. Maybe he's happy to finally have a meaningful task again. Wants to show that he can do more than just run away. Maybe he's even seeking contact with another icon on this quay, the Neopaardenbrug, or Hippopotamus Bridge. We'll be passing under it in a moment. The bridge gets its name because someone once claimed that hippos walked across it. The crane and the bridge. two giants play with a thread in a brotherly way, and so connecting with each other in the line that they both have with history.
I'm glad the giant cats are inside with this horrible weather. And you heard them say that we're going to pass underneath the rhinoceros bridge, hippopotamus bridge, Nijlpaardenbrug. It's called that way because apparently someone saw hippopotamus walk across it, and it's true. That's a true story. In the 1980s, there was a very famous international, very successful businessman who worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and he supplied the world with a much-needed product called cocaine. And his name was Pablo Escobar. Pablo was not only very successful and rich, but he was also a little bit eccentric, and he liked animals. And he liked them a lot. So he built himself a zoo in Medellin, in Colombia. On one of his many business trips to Amsterdam, we also have a very thriving pharmaceutical industry here. He thought it was a good idea to bring one of his famous animals with him, and that was a baby hippopotamus, a baby nailpaard. After a couple of days here, he noticed that the baby hippo was getting a little bit lonely, so he came up with a brilliant idea to show his Amsterdam family to the little baby. Now, we just passed the National Zoo here on the left-hand side, called Artis, and that has a very lovely family of hippos living there. So Pablo rented a van, and he parked the van on the right-hand side of the canal here. His driver did, of course. And then he took the baby hippopotamus, walked across the bridge, went into Artis and showed his relatives to the little baby, and the baby was happy again. That's the reason why this bridge is called the Bridge of Hippopotamus, the Nijlpaardenbrug. Now, of course, this has this very sad ending, and that's not because Pablo got killed a couple of years later, but because after the killing of Pablo, they had a problem with the zoo. Most of the animals were sold or given to collectors or other zoos, but they had a problem with the hippos. Nobody wanted them, so they had to set them free. These hippos still live in a river in Colombia, and since they have no natural enemies, and they're not allowed to kill these animals because they're protected as an endangered species, they've been thriving there, and there's a very big colony of these dangerous animals, and many Colombians have bitten to death. That is what we call an invasive species, and that's also what the next work of art is all about, an invasive species, but then here in Amsterdam. About 40 years ago there was a cargo ship that came from the United States of America, and it had ballast water on board instead of cargo. It was supposed to take cargo here in Amsterdam. And when it arrived in the port here, it dumped its ballast water, and what they didn't know was that there were American crayfish inside the ship, taken on with the ballast water. And these crayfish, they like the American or the Dutch canal water here, and they are thriving. Right now there are millions of American crayfish underneath the boat here. We can't get rid of them. And that's what the next work of art is all about.
There might be people sitting in the boat who find that my stories lack a scientific foundation. I have to admit, giant cats, UFOs and portals to other worlds are rather, how should I put it, speculative. I can easily imagine someone saying, I'm prepared to see a different world, but only if it's real. No fantasies, please. In that case, you should actually buy a ticket to the Moon or Mars. Expensive and time-consuming. Or jump into the water right now. I wouldn't advise it, certainly not here. But it's a great chance to see a new world. A world full of wonderful creatures. Where we can't breathe, but they have no problems. Where you can move over someone without having to jump. Where you can never take a shower because you're already underwater. Where thirst is a strange idea. Over to your left, students of the Breitner Academy have brought up a piece of this underwater world to the surface. in the artwork to merge. Lobsters in all kinds of colours. Animals that are so different that you wouldn't know how to give them a cuddle, or how you can see whether they are happy or angry. If you want to see another world on our own planet, then all you need to do is put your swimming costume on.
This really looks very, very good. In reality, those crayfish are black. This is a lot more colorful, of course. Coming up on the right-hand side is a very famous building here in Amsterdam. It's a nautical museum. It says so on the facade here. It says Het Scheepvaartmuseum. If you pronounce that in English, it will say the Sheepvaart Museum. That's something different. This building was built in the 17th century, in the Golden Age, and this was the warehouse for the biggest company that ever existed in the world. And that was the United East India Company. It was the warehouse, they kept the sails and ropes and guns, ammunition, food, all the stuff that you needed for an international voyage was kept inside, and when a boat was leaving Amsterdam, it went right up here and was restocked with everything that they needed. To the left of the museum you can see a replica of one of the merchant vessels that was used in the 17th century. This is a replica of a boat called the Amsterdam, of course. And these are the boats that sailed all over the world. Robbing, stealing, plundering. And it made us a fortune. In the 17th century, Amsterdam was the most important city in the world. It was the third biggest city in the world after London and Paris. But we were the richest city in the world. The Netherlands are still a very rich country, one of the richest countries in the world. Although a lot of people are complaining nowadays, I still think it's the best place to live. We have Italian guests on board, and I promised them an Italian story. Here on the left-hand side is a museum, this green building that you see coming up on the left-hand side. And that building is called Nemo, you can see it on the top. This is a science museum, and this is built by a very famous Italian architect called Renzo Piano. Renzo built beautiful buildings. He, for instance, also built the Centre Pompidou in Paris. And then Renzo loved Amsterdam, and he was very proud that he was allowed to build a building for us. Now, the people from Amsterdam are a strange breed. We love to give very sarcastic nicknames to everything that we see. So we took a look at this building and thought, well, this looks a little bit like a sinking ship, especially with the ice cube here on the front. So we called it the Titanic. And Renzo didn't like that at all. A very sensitive Italian man. And when he heard it, he took the first plane back to Italy, and he immediately ran to his mother and he cried on his mother's shoulder like all good Italian men. And he said, Mamma mia, I hate those people from Amsterdam. Why are they calling my creation the Titanic? I will never go back to Amsterdam. And he didn't. He missed the opening of the museum, and he promised, he vowed to never build something for those ungrateful Dutch people again. Well, we find that hilarious, but we still have to finish the building. And it's going to be the only one by Renzo. Well, the last work of art is on the other side of the building. It's against the side of it. I'll make a turn in front of it so everybody can see it from all sides. And I'll let you listen to Tom once more.
We are cruising past the House of Reason, if I may call it that. That large turquoise building on your left is NAMO, a museum of science, where you yourself can actively discover how the world works. It would be quite something if you were to deny gravity right here, or to claim that the world is flat, or that a kilogram of steel is heavier than a kilogram of feathers. The laws of nature apply here. I have to hand in my own poetic license. Proof is the only thing that counts here. And so, what an artist duo has dreamed up here, you have to call an act of rebellion. We're cruising all the way around Nemo, and at the end you'll see, if you look back, that they've done something impossible. A waterfall that flows along the facade of Nemo, but not down it, no. The water is flowing upwards. Now you can see what light is capable of, because it can make you believe, even when you know it's impossible. Light is the fastest thing there is. Every scientist can confirm that. But it's also the most elusive, intangible thing, and the most enchanting. And it seems able to do everything. Take a really good look at the Inversion Waterfall by Uksu Studio from Taiwan.
This is a nice one, eh? It's a finale for this year's Light Festival. This is the last work of art that we're going to see today. It's really beautiful. And it's been working all along, even in this wind. As I said, this is the last work of art for this year's Light Festival. But I'm going to bore you with one more story here about our lovely country. I already told you that Amsterdam is below sea level, but it's not only Amsterdam that has this problem. 1/3 of the Netherlands is below sea level, but it's in the name already, Netherlands. It's the nether region, the lowlands. As I said, 1/3 of our country, and it's the western part. It's the most important part, where all the big cities are, and our harbors and the airport, etc. And it's only protected by a thin strip of dunes, because it's next to the North Sea. The lowest part in the Netherlands is 8 meters below sea level, and that's 24 feet. Schiphol Airport is 4 meters below sea level, that's about 12 feet. 12, 13 feet. So we have a sort of a serious problem here. Now luckily we've been dealing with it for over 1,000 years here, and we gained a lot of expertise. We have this intricate system of levees and dikes and dams and sluices and locks all over the Netherlands to keep our feet dry, and it works. It works so well that it became a very big export product. We export our knowledge all over the world. Let me give you one example. The Palm Island in Dubai was built by the Dutch. Not the houses on it, they're ugly, but the island itself, that's built by us. We also came up with an idea to save New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And unfortunately that was rejected by the Army Corps of Engineers. They thought they knew better. And the plan that they had didn't work, so last year they came back to us and said, well, please do what you came up with because our thing is not working. We know what we're doing, usually. Of course there are exceptions, and one of those exceptions is coming up here on the right hand side. This is just too stupid to be true. On the right hand side you can see a Chinese restaurant, and it's a floating Chinese restaurant. It's a copy of one of the floating restaurants in Hong Kong Harbor. And these people wanted to buy this boat, build this boat. They took the drawings from the Hong Kong one, translated the Chinese drawings into Dutch, and they were submitted to the city to get a building permit. Our engineers looked it over and they said, well, good idea. We made some calculations, looks good, and they got approval. On opening day, they invited 700 people, 700 Dutch journalists to write stories about it. And when about 400 or 500 people were on board, they noticed that the boat was going down slowly. And of course, everybody was rushed off the boat and they had no idea what happened. So they went back to the drawing board, and the engineers took about 4 weeks to come up with what went wrong. And there were 2 big mistakes. One not that big, but a stupid mistake. We are the tallest people in the world, and therefore we are a little bit heavier than the average Chinese person from Hong Kong. That was one mistake. The second was even dumber. Hong Kong Harbor is salt water, and this is fresh water. And the buoyancy of fresh water is 20% less than that of salt water. So it was impossible to get so many people on board this boat and make it safe. And of course the owners of the boat were not very happy, and they made a deal with the city that they only allow 375 people on board, that includes the staff, and there has to always be someone sitting at the front door checking how many people go in and how many people go out. So it's still in operation. And it's actually a very good restaurant. It's called Sea Palace. You can recommend it if you like Chinese food. Just go there. It was a little bit embarrassing for us to say the least. We were the laughing stock of every engineer in the Netherlands. But well, we're used to that. It keeps us humble, you could say. We're almost at the end of the tour, ladies and gentlemen. In a couple of minutes we will be landing again, and I will drop you off in the center of Amsterdam. And for those people who do not live in Amsterdam, let me give you a serious warning. We have bicycles here in Amsterdam. And people who ride bicycles in Amsterdam are serial killers. They have only one target, and that's tourists. We get points for hitting tourists. So please be careful, watch where you're going, don't follow your phone, look left, look right, look above you, look behind you. We come from all over the place, and usually we don't have any lights on in the dark. If you leave the boat, make sure that you take all of your belongings with you, umbrellas, hats, scarves, yourself. Very good suggestion, coming from my left. And of course your telephones. I have more than enough iPhones. I don't like Android, so if you leave one, leave an iPhone. But I have enough, don't worry about it. Yeah, if you're staying in Amsterdam, I wish you a very pleasant stay. If you're leaving Amsterdam, I wish you a very pleasant journey. If you enjoyed the tour and if you enjoyed my babblings, there is of course always the possibility to leave a tip. If you don't give a tip, we call it a Jewish tip here in Amsterdam. We love giving strange sentences. There's a plate here on the right hand side next to the exit. You were a fantastic audience, and I hope to see you somewhere else, sometime, and have a great evening. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Maybe I